Hello and good morning everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar today. So I'm Amy Hammond, I work in the marketing team here at Bytes, and I'm delighted to be joined by James Hughes, the field CTO at Rubrik, and also Matt Compton, our head of data management at Bytes Software Services, who will be running through the webinar with you. So today's webinar is going to be focusing on data management and compliance for hybrid and multi-cloud enterprises.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, my name's Matt. I head up the data management team here at Bytes. I have done for over 10 years, and Bytes have a long-standing success around backup, disaster recovery, and business continuity. We've been working with our customers for 20 plus years to provide services to make sure that we have the resilient solutions and able to recover data. And if you look at that period over, back even into the last century, there hasn't been a huge amount of change in that environment. Back then, we were seeing customers backing up to tape. We still see customers backing up to tape for long-term retention. We saw customers then having a backup schedule of a daily, a weekly, and a monthly backup, and we still see customers doing that today. And we've seen a number of vendors come into the mix to try and disrupt that and change it with a new mindset, and not really had a lot of success. And the same vendors that we saw back then, the same vendors now, apart from a few that have come in and focused mainly around sort of being a bit better at backing up virtual environments or being able to support cloud, but nothing ever really game changing. Now, the reason why Bytes decided to partner heavily with Rubrik back last year and seen some great success in our journey with them is because they have come in with a disruptive technology that is really changing the market. The way that they look at data resiliency around backup, about recovering the data is fundamentally different and up to where we should be today in 2019 and into next year, rather than the technologies that customers are still using that actually have the same kind of mindset that we saw and have seen for the last 20 or so years. So I just wanted to do a bit of an introduction and kind of set the scene as to why we've partnered with Rubrik and seen such great success. It's a cloud-first message and plays massively into Bytes' sweet spot in terms of how we enable customers use and benefit from cloud technology that's available from today. So I'll be in the background with James and be back around at the end of the webinar if there is any questions that I may answer. But that's all I wanted to say, and I will pass over to James.
Great, thank you very much. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name's James Hughes, and I'm a field CTO for Rubrik. For those of you who don't know, Rubrik is a Silicon Valley-based company. We specialize in data protection and data management, and I'm going to hopefully show you over the next sort of 20 minutes, half an hour, why we don't call it backup anymore. So I generally really hate the phrase digital disruption, but modernization and digitization is real, and nearly every company that we work with, and we work with companies all over the world in every single sector, are all doing some form of modernization of their platforms. And generally they're either in sort of 1, 2, or 3. So traditionally you knew where all of your data was because it was in your data centers and you knew how to control it and you knew what left and what came in. More increasingly, we see people in a much more hybrid mode. So they've got a lot of their applications, a lot of their core data in their data centers, but they've also really adopted SaaS platforms. There's been an absolute explosion in platforms like Office 365, CRM platforms such as Salesforce, and HR platforms. The Oracle Cloud and Workday are doing tremendously well. And that's a lot of organizations sort of first foray into the cloud. But also increasingly, they choose one cloud and then they start moving workloads up there. They start building new applications up there. So we see a lot of our enterprise customers and our sort of commercial customers operating this way. And then on the far right, what we call sort of mode 3 is absolute hybrid adoption. And we don't think that people are going to be calling it hybrid in the future. We think it's all about dynamic workloads. So particularly in the fintech space that we work fairly heavily, this is really prevalent, where you're provisioning to your data center in the same way that you provision to your cloud, and you're moving workloads around dynamically based on the problems that those workloads are trying to solve. such as month end or Black Friday or anything like that, where volumes are going to increase, you've got to have those workloads based in the most appropriate place, whilst at the same time sort of managing and juggling your costs. So all of that sounds brilliant, and nearly everyone is trying to get to that future mode. And it really achieves your customer goals, and it allows you to service your customers much, much better. But it does have a consequence to your business goals, and certainly how you operate your business. And particularly having data all over the place, and having data in multiple clouds and in multiple data centers and at the edge and in remote offices and branch offices, that creates different challenges, which we talk a lot to our customers. So you have contracts generally with your business about you're going to back up your data. But how do you do that when that data is across multiple clouds? Do you have any data privacy or compliance initiatives, particularly around data sovereignty? How do you effectively manage the life cycle of that data, knowing that if you have to archive it for 5 years, how do you make sure after 5 years that data is effectively purged in all the locations it can be? And then if you wanted to take it one step further and not see this as backup and data protection, and you wanted to really get the most out of your data, how could you sort of integrate all of that data that you've got and actually put some smarts over it? So we've noticed that actually, the more data is dispersed across multiple clouds, and most customers have, one cloud at the moment, but ultimately there's a goal, most organizations, to be multi-cloud eventually. But this creates a silo of tools and a silo of processes. And all of these clouds have proprietary tools, and this, ultimately, when you look down on your organization and kind of widen your data set, you've got a really broad and diverse attack surface now. And we take security really, really seriously. So to be able to bring all this together, generally it's pretty costly. To be able to integrate it, you need guys that really know how to integrate it and know the code and know the languages with which to operate and integrate with APIs. Reducing the cost of ownership, the enemy of reducing cost is complexity. And if you're managing multiple workloads and multiple clouds, that's always going to be more complex. And then compromises in data sovereignty. And this is really prevalent across financial services, but it's really prevalent across a lot of industries. There are many baked-in contracts with many clients that say that your data must remain in X, Y, and Z country, but we know that users can be like water, and they'll just find a way around IT rules to make it more convenient for them. For example, if you have Swiss banking data, and Swiss banking data must never leave Switzerland, yet a user put it on a laptop and installed it on an office in Singapore because it was convenient, it's really difficult to be able to detect that stuff. And these are sort of similar problems that a data management platform should be able to help you address. So this is the world as we see it. So we think you're going to have data in your private data centers, in your clouds, your remote offices, in your colos, your branch offices. And then we want to be able to do 4 core things with it. Now, this list will increase over time, and I can tell you about the vision of the company and where we're going. But right now, we're focused on 4 core tenets of data management. The first is data protection. So we need the ability to protect that data, whatever cloud, whatever data center, whatever country it is, in the same universal way. Next, we want to help you with your data governance. And that's all about finding out what data you've got and exactly where is it. On the third point, data assurance and security. So data assurance is always knowing that you have a copy of the data when you need it, knowing it's archived, knowing it's there properly, but also knowing it's protected. And we have a completely immutable file system because we detect against ransomware, or we protect against ransomware. We have a product called Radar, which detects against ransomware. And that uses our own machine learning, which I'll talk a little bit more about now. And then the last thing is data mobility. So many organizations, in fact, nearly all organizations, have a dual data center strategy. So you have all your primary apps in one data center, and if it fails, you fail things over to the secondary, or you start running them in one great big hybrid mode. And components of data centers fail all the time. That's why we build resiliency, but data centers themselves hardly ever fail. So then that starts questioning, why have you got 2 data centers continuously? Why don't you build out a primary data center? And if something happens, what insurers call an act of God, why can't you replay those applications up into the cloud? And then when your primary data center is back up and running, do a controlled failover back to your primary data center and continue servicing your business. And as we're an application-aware data protection facility, a backup facility if you like, then we know what your applications look like. We know the makeup of your applications, and then we can do the orchestrated failover, controlled replay of your apps and your data into the cloud. So this is traditionally what backup looks like. And everything I've just spoken about is everything that we believe that enterprises of any shapes and sizes need the ability to do. Yet backup looks like this. And as Matt mentioned earlier, you still have companies using tape. And we see a lot of organizations still using tape, and we do integrate with tape. We do have customers using tape, but generally you have the backup software, then you've got backup servers, then you've got proxies, then you've got to replicate that data, then you've got a catalog, you've got to dedupe the metadata, then you've got the backup storage, then you've got to chuck it onto another media being tape, and then generally that tape goes on a van to some archive somewhere. And that doesn't really help your automation and your simplification of operational management. So what we do is we take all of that away, and our boxes are really simple. You scale the boxes out based on, so we call them bricks, Rubrik, but they're ultimately appliances that look very similar to this graphic here. And ultimately, we scale out based on the volume of data that we're protecting. And it's a complete scale out architecture. So as you grow, Rubrik grows with you. There's no truing up of licenses and truing up one vendor with another vendor because you've got multiple vendors in your backup stack. It's all just one simple fabric. And we protect your public and private data. And then we just want to help you rationalize and consolidate your data. We want to have the ability to back up and recover at scale. We want to secure your data wherever it is, simplify it with absolute automation, and then ultimately all of this equals in a lower cost. So that's the backup platform. But we also have the ability to put a whole load of smarts over it. And this is our platform called Polaris. Now, when we're protecting your data with Polaris, Polaris has the ability to orchestrate that data framework and orchestrate the data protection of it. But when we're backing it up, we then extract the metadata from the backup and we create this universal ledger. So think of it as a single pane of glass across all of your data sets, which then allow us to surface relationships and really develop deeper connections between your data, which helps you, for your business continuity. So now we know what your applications look like and what's talking to what, but we can also help with your compliance, finding your GDPR data, etc. And then via our own machine learning, we can then help you with security. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do in security later on in this deck. But ultimately, what we allow you to do to eliminate all your data silos, extend it into hybrid cloud, so operate however you want to do it, and then reduce your operational complexity by having a single fabric to manage all of your data protection. And these are the core key tenets of how Rubrik works. So wherever your data is, you have the ability to manage it globally, so manage and recover it globally. We do ransomware detection. Office 365 has exploded. I think Office 365, broadly speaking, has really caught the whole world a little bit off guard, and certainly caught some of the industry watchdogs off guard. But the explosion of utilizing Exchange Online, for example, has been massive. It's absolutely prevalent in sort of 99% of the organizations we certainly work with. But if you think about it, when you're trying to solve governance and compliance problems, your email is the company's second biggest filing platform. So if you're trying to solve governance problems without looking at email, then that's another set of tools you've got to be able to investigate and interrogate. So that's something we protect, and we see increasingly organizations wanting to protect their Office 365 workloads. And that includes OneDrive and SharePoint and ultimately Teams we see being adopted rapidly as well. Then you have your native cloud application protection. As we've spoken about earlier, the ability to recover and failover for disaster recovery. And then our platform called Sonar, which is all about data classification. But what we're doing here is creating a universal fabric across all of your data sets. And modernization usually comes with 3 initiatives. So your organization is trying to increase its revenue. And in IT terms, that means getting your products to market faster. And then in IT production/infrastructure terms, that means making things self-service. And the best way to make things self-service is have it completely API automated via standard frameworks and standard architectural patterns. And we can deploy that within your data centers or within your cloud, however you want to do it. But it's all about increasing your speed to market. So if you deploy something straight out to your customers, it's protected immediately without having to log a ticket to someone. The next part of making of any transformation is reducing your operational expenses, and complexity is the absolute enemy of cost reduction. So what you need to do is just make it really, really simple, and that's how we play. So we've got really good interfaces, really good dashboards where you can see what's going on across your entire world at any one time. But it's all about just reducing that operational management. And typically we see customers and a total cost of ownership, factoring in people's time, etc. We see typically a saving of between sort of 35 and 40%. And then lastly, anything that drives a major motivation is all about risk as well. So we have a holistic approach to risk. Not only we've got a completely immutable file system, but then we start showing you what files you've got and what data you've got and what country it's in and what cloud it's in or what data center it's in. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that later on in this deck. But also we have the complete ability to detect and protect against ransomware. So how does it work? 3 broad headings. So we want to work things really, really simply, no more complexity. So we boiled it down to three broad headings. One is availability. So this is about SLA policy automation. And really simply put, this is what server have you got? So if you've got a tier 1 SQL server and you want to take a snapshot of that every 30 minutes, and then of that database, you want to then keep on Rubrik for 7 days in case you need to recover from it. And then after 7 days, send that data to the cloud or somewhere cheap and deep, or even tape if you want, but send that off for 5 years. And then after 5 years, purge it. So that's what we do. And that's as simple as it gets. But we also have the ability to recover quickly via our live map feature. So again, if we've taken a snapshot of a database, which is going completely wrong, and we know in IT just things go wrong every now and again, we're all about helping you recover quickly. So if you want to mount that data up onto our device from a backup, then you can. And then we integrate directly with it. So we'll host your VMs or your databases, whatever, up onto our appliances and be able to service your business. And we orchestrate the movement of data in a fairly sophisticated way. But the more and more you do this, the more and more you get used to operating with Rubrik. And then in the later versions of Rubrik, we also have all flash appliances that if you really wanted to be able to protect your data and restore your data and live back your data at sort of near real-time speeds, you can do that as well. And we have new appliances being released. Extensibility, so we are API first, and a lot of vendors claim to be API first, but we're only a 5-year-old company. We designed our APIs from the ground up, and we compete in Silicon Valley with the FANGs of this world. That's the Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google's for the best talent. And our user interfaces are brilliant. They look really, really good. They're really, really intuitive. They don't require a lot of training, but ultimately all of the APIs, all of the interfaces and the UX interfaces all interface with our APIs. So if you never wanted to log into a Rubrik device and do everything via your traditional tool sets, you can absolutely do that. And again, we're cloud native. There are other providers out there that claim to do this, but they're ultimately bolting this functionality on top of older software. We've designed this to be cloud native day one. And then finally, security. Absolute end-to-end security. So we have encryption in flight and at rest, as well as an immutable file system which protects against ransomware. And then we know that you want to do self-service, etc., in the ways that you're operating this thing. So operating your data protection. So we have complete role-based access control and multi-tenancy. And we have really deep coverage for your critical workloads. So again, a lot of your data is on NAS, and many of you may have NetApp as your primary NAS. We've signed strategic deals with NetApp to integrate with StorageGrid and SnapDiff, which is all about protecting your data as quickly as possible, because we know your data is increasing, but we know your backup window isn't getting any bigger with it. So that's entirely designed to make you as efficient as possible. But we also integrate with all the common names you see there. Databases, we see a lot of Oracle and SQL out there, but increasingly we see much more MongoDB, Cassandra, PostgreSQL. And we made an acquisition a few years ago called Data.io to be able to protect those workloads in exactly the same efficient way as you protect your more traditional workloads. So however you want to operate within your data center in the cloud, we can protect those specific workloads. We support all the major operating systems as you'd expect, as well as all the major virtualization tiers, including Acropolis from Nutanix, cloud and SaaS, or with AWS, Azure, Google, as well as Office 365, and then really solid integrations with partners of ours like ServiceNow and Splunk and Datadog. And all of these are API integrated, so they're not just limited to these three, there's many more. And then lastly, what we do is automation and data management. And this is where we created a platform called Rubrik Build. So we, out of the box, are really closely, we really integrate closely with Splunk. We work really closely with ServiceNow. We see ServiceNow as in the majority of our customers, we see ServiceNow as their ITSM platform. And again, if you want to control our devices via ServiceNow, so your service management team, for example, can keep that sort of single pane of glass across your infrastructure or your production infrastructure, to know, not just your production, your entire ecosystem, to be able to see what's going on. You don't need to log into yet another place. The ServiceNow is the center of your world. Keep using ServiceNow, and we can completely populate ServiceNow with Rubrik data. Plus, if you want to orchestrate your DevOps and your workflows, Ansible, Chef, Puppet, Self-Stack, we see those in the wild continuously, and then the infrastructure management via Terraform. And we had some feedback from our customers saying, we really like your APIs, but they're not ready enough. They're, as in, you have to log into the devices and get them. Can you create something that just allows us to do something with this stuff without logging into a Rubrik device to get it? We want to experiment. And we thought that was brilliant. So we created Rubrik Build. And Rubrik Build, again, I hope is a complete differentiator between us and our competitors, because this is a complete ecosystem about how to make your environment as automated and as efficient as possible. So in there, we've got complete SDKs of all your favorite tools and languages. We have tooling integration with all of your favorite tools. And then we created a whole load of use cases about how you can use the technology. There's even one there at the top there with Roxy, Rubrik's intelligent assistant, which integrates with AWS's Lex. So if you really wanted to speak to your Alexa in the morning while you're brushing your teeth and go, hey Alexa, how are my backups performing? You can do that. And we have certain gaming companies that are doing that. I can't imagine if you're a bank, you're ever going to do that. But if you're, if you're slightly more leading edge, then know that functionality is there. But not only that, Rubrik Build is a community. So we want customers to help other customers. And as you're all communicating and collaborating with each other, you earn Rubrik points, and then Rubrik points equate into real prizes. So from Alexas to PlayStations, etc., etc. The more you do, the bigger the prizes are. The more that we really want to reward you for being part of the community. But on top of that, when you are a customer of Rubrik's, we don't just stop at the technology level, because we know that any modernization and any transformation of any company is also, the culture is a core part of doing it. And where you're changing the way you're running your infrastructure and getting people to collaborate in a much more DevOpsy way, we want to help you do that. So, we have customer forums, which you kind of expect, where we go through our roadmaps and we talk to you about things, but we also have things called Rubrik events. And this is where we'll hire out the place in WeWork or somewhere near you guys. We'll bring in beers and pizzas, and it's beers and Rubrik. And we'll go after a use case, and you will bring your laptops, and we'll start collaborating and figuring out how to solve a problem utilizing Rubrik technology, as well as using Ansible or Chef, Puppet, etc. Any of the other sort of tools that you would want to use, and then we'll integrate it and we'll work on it together. We do a customer advisory board annually. So if you're on the cab, what we do is we prioritize all our features at the cab. So again, these are all the things that our customers want us to work on. We prioritize it, and that helps us develop over the next 12 months the features that are coming in the next releases. We also want to be thought leaders in any sector, and we work in every single sector, and we get to see an awful lot of what people are doing, which allows us to create a really unique view on the world. And then lastly, if you are a customer, we always want you to know the roadmap. We always want you to know what's coming and what we're working on. So in summary, to get from 1 to 3, if I go back to the very first slide, your organization's inevitably going to end up in some sort of hybrid operating model. Whereas ITIL doesn't fit a wholly cloud model, but then operating entirely in Agile doesn't fit a wholly data center centric model. So we know that you're going to end up with 2 kind of hybrid models. And what we want you to do is have it all protected by Rubrik. So if you're operating in a more DevOps model and more modern self-service level, you've got to be able to do all your own data protection and your own data restoration from a self-service team. But many of you still operate from a central sort of traditional IT operations team as well. So you can operate in a hybrid mode, and you can operate however you want utilizing Rubrik technology. Because again, all change is inherently risky. So if we can put a safety, a seat belt across all of your change, for example, and have the ability to roll back and protect that data no matter what you're doing, then we can do that. And we'll support the data, we'll support whatever data you have, and then however you want to use the platform, we support as well. 9 times out of 10, we see customers using ServiceNow, so I put that on there as sort of the linchpin between the 2 operating models, and then Rubrik protects all of it. So this again is why we don't call it backup. It's one platform at the heart of your data lifecycle. So you do your NAS protection, your data protection, your VM, your Office 365. We help you automate and experiment via Rubrik Build. We do copy data management. So if you want to replay your production data into dev environments and have them work on it, do all that from the Rubrik platform. We then allow you to cloud archive. So instead of all the complexities of tape, if you want to send it up to the cloud for cheap and deep, then we allow you to do that. We've also got some really sophisticated ways of aging out data on the cloud as well, because we're again completely designed to help you reduce your costs and run as an efficient environment as possible. We do cloud native protection. We also cloud data migration. And again, this is really interesting because we can convert. So if you're converting or moving your workloads up to, say, Azure, we can convert your VMDK files into AMDK files and replay that data straight up into the cloud. Which means, we have organizations that have used us as their cloud migration entity as the primary feature. And then it just so happens that we can protect the data as well. So they use us for that. But ultimately, they bought us as a migration tool. Then ransomware we've spoken about, regulatory we've spoken about, and then the ability to reduce the need for a secondary data center and migrate is something else. And this is typically what a customer journey looks like with us. So you turn us on to protect your data center and to get you working in a sort of more modern way. Then you start protecting your cloud workloads with us. And that allows us to centralize all of your workloads in a single place via GPS with Polaris. And then you can have your data assurance, knowing that we're protecting it against ransomware, which keeps your auditors and your external auditors happy, as well as your internal compliance teams and your CISO. Your data governance teams, about finding sensitive data, what you've got and where it is. And then your disaster recovery is all about saving your costs and making your environment as efficient as possible. And internally, we call Rubrik a bit of a rocket ship. So a little bit about us. We came out of stealth in 2015, and we were sort of starting to be seen as cool. And then by 2016, we were seen as cool by Gartner, and VMworld started to pay attention to us. By 2017, we'd released the third major iteration of our software, and we made it to the Forbes 100 best cloud companies list. But as well, then we won our first gold award at VMworld. By 2018, we won gold again, but this time we won gold for security, and that's all about our ransomware product called Radar. We also made the Forbes 100 best cloud companies list. And then going into 2019, I'm pleased to say that we've just come back from VMworld, where we won gold again. So that's 8 VMware World Awards that we've won, and Forbes have given us the mantle of the 9th best cloud company. And because of all this momentum, we've got some pretty heavy hitters, serious heavy hitters on our board. So we have John Chambers, former CEO of Cisco, arguably one of the most successful CEOs the world has ever seen. We've got Frank Slootman, who's currently the CEO of Snowflake. That's a massive cloud-based data warehouse and data lake, for those of you that haven't heard of that before. And then we've got John Thompson. John Thompson is the chairman of the board of Microsoft and is a board member of Rubrik, as well as Enrique and Mark Leslie. And there's no point having huge customers and operating in huge enterprise areas if your support isn't good enough. And we have a third-party audited NPS score of 82. 82 is pretty good in the support area. We also have full 24/7 follow the sun, ranging from Palo Alto right the way to Sydney. So if you are a global organization and you need support day or night, we can help you. And we've got a really solid global gold standard of support. So we are the complete data management. So we offer data protection, data governance, disaster recovery, and the ability to move your data around. And it's all about managing your data in multi-clouds. It's complete simplicity of just set it and forget it. And then we create this unified data framework. And we know security is important. Security is really, really important. So this is what we try and do to help. So we automatically archive. When we archive your data, we know that we don't want it to keep in the same archive layer forever. So if we're working with something like Azure, we can automatically archive your data to the cheapest storage format. So as it gets to a certain age, and as you've ever utilized the archive or pull back data, we take a look at this stuff, and then we can age out the oldest versions of the data to put it into the cheapest part to save you money. We have complete end-to-end encryption, and the file systems are completely immutable wherever that data lives. The US government and three-letter acronym US government entities are clients of ours. In order to do that, we need military-grade certifications on our security, which we have. And then we can detect ransomware, and then we can minimize your exposure to sensitive data. So what I'm going to tell you a little bit now is Radar, and how Radar works. We believe that your organization should have defense in depth. You should have layers of security ranging from the edge right the way down to your data set. But things happen. 71% of organizations have been hit by ransomware, and as ransomware is generally growing between 100 and 150% a year, it's a matter of when, not if. Yet we believe that we want to help you with that. So if you do get covered with ransomware, Rubrik wants to, or you get hit with ransomware, Rubrik wants to be your absolute last line of defense. So we want to help you recover faster and then increase intelligence. So how we do this is we do this via our own machine learning. So if you think about it, backup is now the only platform that gets to see your entire data set, whether it's in your data center, at the edge, in a branch office, or in the cloud. We get to see all of that data, which means that we end up building a pretty good picture about what a normal day in your environment looks like, what a normal day of change looks like. Which means if you have an anomalous change rate anywhere in your environment, we can see that that looks like an abnormal day in your environment. And then we want to be able to detect and help you with that. And this is kind of how Radar works. So we check out for anomalous change detection rates. So in this example, you can see that we've got sort of 3,000 or so files that have been deleted and 3,000 files or so have been created. And that's pretty abnormal in your world. And if you've got this deep within a folder, deep within a folder, deep within a folder, that's really difficult to detect. But we can detect it, and then we alert it to you guys, either your security teams, your administration teams, your operations teams, and go, hang on a minute, there's something a bit fishy here. Can you investigate it? And then once you've investigated it, we want you to either restore that data in place or send it off to your own forensics labs, or even mount that data up onto our devices just to get you servicing your business quicker. But this is a really, really powerful tool, and we use all of our own machine learning to be able to detect this. And we've got a lot of customers using this at the moment, and a lot of organizations detecting ransomware and using us to mitigate. The last tool I want to tell you about here now is Sonar. So as your data becomes more fragmented, and as your data becomes all over the place in different clouds and different DCs, you open yourself up to different risks. Where is my data? Is it secure? What's my risk posture? Is my data compliant? And we think answering all of these questions starts really simply with just visibility. Just like any transformation, if you're doing anything in your organization, general rule of thumb is make it as simple as possible to make you as successful as possible. And it's the same with us. We think it starts with visibility. And there's a trade-off, because we know your data is growing. We know there's lots of compliance out there. And we know that you're not getting any more people to be able to do this stuff. And your data is growing, and the compliance is growing, but you're still not getting more people to help you. And GDPR really let us sort of rocket up in the world, because any global entity that had a European entity had to be able to find that European-based data. But now the rest of the world is really woken up to that. So there's going to be a California Data Protection Act. And I dare say eventually there's going to be a USA-wide Data Protection Act. And then the whole world's going to have a Data Protection Act. And every company operating in every jurisdiction in the universe is going to have to find this data, which is really expensive and really difficult to do. So that's what we want to try and help do. So we want to automate the data protection and the finding of the data and really help you achieve compliance. So for example, here in PCI, we're looking for 16-digit card numbers and things that look like credit cards married with addresses. And this sort of example here, we could say, hey, you've got 1,000 credit card numbers on this server. Or if you're looking for GDPR and you're looking for personally identifiable information, you've got 500 on this server. Or if you're looking for CCPA data, you've got social security numbers on this server or in this cloud or in this data center. And it's all about just providing you a much better overview about what data you've got and whether it's in compliance or not. Because data governance is also really, really key. As I spoke about earlier, if you've got data that can never leave the country, so if you've got sort of tax information that can never leave the Channel Islands, but people are like water, as we all know, and you see that being backed up on a London-based appliance or a French-based appliance, then you know you're out of breach. And that's really difficult to detect otherwise, because you've got to be continually looking at it. Now your backup platform is continually looking at it, and we really want to help you stay compliant and meet your business objectives. So I hope all of that made sense on kind of the smarts of why Rubrik isn't seen as backup and why we do things a little bit differently. So last sort of couple of slides now to summarize. A traditional backup requires FTEs. We believe it should be automated. So we've made us completely API, 100% API driven, and we have absolute integrations with Chef, Puppet, Ansible, ServiceNow, anything like that. And that's all about increasing your employee productivity, but also optimizing your operations. Ransomware is traditionally found by your users. We would rather have a machine learning approach to ransomware, which is why we created Radar, again, optimizing your operations. You've got many applications that weren't ever designed to be used in the cloud. And that's why we created two products of our NAS Direct to Archive. So again, if you're protecting your NAS workloads, you can buy less Rubrik and send that straight to the cloud, and we'll utilize the cloud as opposed to your data center. But we also created something called AppFlows, which gives you the ability to disaster recovery straight to the cloud. And again, that's all about optimizing your operations. When it comes to databases such as Oracle and SQL, there's lots of manual scripting and it's slow RTOs. We have instant clones and instant recovery for Oracle and SQL, as well as the ability to live mount. And then we see more and more applications being written in modern apps, such as MongoDB or Cassandra or Hadoop. Hadoop's an interesting one because it started life 4 years ago as kind of a disposable data lake, but now it's very much in production, and we have a lot of customers wondering how they protect their data lakes. That's something that we can offer you. And we've got a company called Rubrik Data.io, which is now Rubrik Mosaic, as well as being able to support SAP HANA and Office 365 and any of your other sort of modern workloads. And then lastly, to be able to achieve compliance and proactive compliance, you require a lot of tools. And again, when you're doing a lot of tools with a lot of departments and operating at a global scale, that always comes with the production overhead. If any of you have ever worked on a trading floor and you run compliance against trading floors, they'll notice the performance impact immediately. But it's the same with a lot of organizations. What we do is we run against the backup. So we can find all this data, however geographically dispersed it is, using Sonar without any form of production, as well as any form of impact on production, which means you can give these tools to your users without worrying about affecting the speeds of your systems. So in closing, who we are. Gartner has seen us as a visionary. Forrester sees us as the leader. We're the 9th best cloud company according to Forbes. We're in the top 100 companies to work for with LinkedIn. We've got an 82 NPATs Net Promoter Score, and we've won 8 Best in Show awards at VMworld. What we deliver is one solution to manage your data, either on-prem or cloud. It's absolute simplicity via our policies. We have rapid innovation, both in terms of the systems we're protecting, but also the smarts we're applying around your data. And we're a complete API-first platform, and we've made that easier via Rubrik Build. And then what you get, absolute operational efficiency. You have the ability to use your workloads in your data center or in the cloud. You get data assurance for security and governance, and then ultimately with all of this and the automation that we bring to it as a complete lower total cost of ownership. So I hope I haven't bored you too much. Thank you very much for listening, and with that, I'll hand you back to Amy or Matt.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. So we're now going to open it up to questions. So if you do have any questions, on the control panel just at the side of your screen, there is a questions tab. If you just open that up and type your question in there, I'll read that out for James. We'll just wait 1 minute, see if any come through. Okay, so there's a question here that says, how do I get access to a demo of the technology?
Well, that's really easy. We can either set that up directly, or we can work with Bytes and get that. I suppose if you contact Bytes, I would have said, and then we can go from there.
Yep, there is a feedback form at the end. There is a feedback form at the end where you can tick yes or no for a demo. So pop that in there and we'll get in touch, definitely. Okay, so I think that's all the questions for today. So thank you everyone for taking the time out of your day to join the webinar, and thank you James for presenting. We really appreciate it. As mentioned at the beginning, I will send you all a link to the recording tomorrow, and if you could fill out the feedback form at the end and provide us with any feedback, we'd really appreciate that. Okay, so thank you everyone and enjoy the rest of your day.